Hi friends, my name is Faye and you're watching Mystery Date with a Book. Today we're going to talk about the best books I've read in the year of the pandemic, in 2020. Now, a lot of us have had more time to read. I haven't. I got a few months off between March and June, but then, it was back to work as always, schools opened back in August, the end of August, and I've been working non-stop since then because, teachers never stop. And I haven't read as much as I wish I had. I read 75 books this year, which is not bad, 75 books, for your average Joe is okay, is good. But I wish I had read more. I wish I had time to just relax, sit and read a book. Hopefully next year things will settle down and I'll get more time. But yeah, I have a whole pile of books here, as you may have seen in the thumbnail. And we're gonna go through my favorite books of 2020. Now, most of these books were not published in 2020. They're oldies. But you read what you want, I don't always read new releases. I read a mixture of things, so here we go. All right, now we're going to start with a thriller, The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. Now, I really enjoyed this, I have to say. I don't really read a lot of thrillers, usually. I don't know why, because every time I read one, I really love it. So, yeah. This made into my top books of 2020. I don't even know how many books I have here. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. My top 7 books of 2020. Such a random number. But yeah, The Turn of the Key. It was about this... She's not a nanny. She's a childminder. And she goes to a house in Scotland in order to look after these children. And she's going to be a live-in nanny. We're going to call her a nanny. And there's something very unique about the house where they live. It's all very technological, very high-tech, but also there's some aspects of really old history there. And they come together beautifully. And honestly, I stayed up late reading this and then I couldn't sleep. No. Especially if you actually work with children, it kind of gets you because, she's working with children and oh my goodness, it was a wild ride. I couldn't sleep when I finished this book. Then I tweeted that I couldn't sleep and then Ruth Ware, the actual author, replied saying, oops, sorry. So yeah, thanks Ruth Ware for keeping me up at night. My goodness. The next book I have here, I found it very late in the year. I had heard about it before. I gave this book as a gift to Mary from Mary Among Stories a while back, but I hadn't had the chance to read the book myself. But I got it as a Christmas present, and that is The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie Mackesy. I can never say his name, I'm really sorry. But it's a beautiful book. Some say it's... I don't even know how to categorize this. Some would say it's a philosophy book. Some say it's not non-fiction because these animals don't really talk. But it's, they're little quotes that make you stop and think about life. So you have to kind of digest things slowly. And, it's just a beautiful book. The illustrations are gorgeous. It's, it's such an easy read, but it makes you think. So I got this as a Christmas present. I read this in one sitting. I got a bookmark to sit down with it, and I never use a bookmark because it was just so good. I just read through the whole thing. And I think this is gonna be my new Christmas book, a book I'm gonna read every Christmas. Just, to remind me of what's important and, bring me back down to earth at the end of the year. So yeah, I highly recommend this book. Right, highly recommend it to anyone. Anyone who reads. This is really good. Read it. Then we got a non-fiction. Now, I don't really usually read non-fiction, but this is a non-brainer. This is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. Now, if you haven't been following Adam Kay through this whole lockdown fiasco, you're missing out. He's so funny, he's so good, and he's very insightful as well sometimes, and his book is brilliant. I discovered his book this year, and it's been such a pleasure to read. These are his diaries from back when he was working for the NHS as a doctor, and they're, you know, real accounts of what happened to him and his patients and all that in the hospitals. And guys, this is good. If you haven't read it yet, if you don't know Adam Kay, if you want to get into non-fiction, this is a good way to start. This is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. Okay, now we're getting into our fantasy books. Now, as you know, I love fantasy. I love my fantasy books. Let me actually show you. My voice is going. Let me show you my stats really quickly for the year. All the genres I've read. Can you tell I like fantasy? Can you tell? Like, yeah. I read one historical fiction. I haven't put it in yet. But yeah, I think I like fantasy the best. And interesting fact, I thought, you know, in my mind, I thought my favorite age group was YA, was young adult. But no, it turns out I don't really read a lot of YA. At least not this year. I haven't read much YA. But yeah. So, yeah, I kind of like my fantasy books. And this one is the final book in the Mistborn trilogies. The Hero of Ages. It was so good. So good. I have no words. I'm not going to say anything because this is the third book in the trilogy and it would give you major spoilers if I went into it. So, all I'm going to say is, if you haven't read the Mistborn trilogy yet, do yourself a favor and read it. I know they're chunky boys. Like, they are all very, very big, chunky books, but it's worth it. Worth it. Okay, these are not in the right order, by the way. They're not in the order that I've read them. They're all over the place. Next book. I found this on Waterstones. I don't usually buy books physically from the shop in Waterstones because they're really expensive. I wish I could afford them, but I can't. Especially when you're saving up for a house. So, I got this at Waterstones, which was a real treat for me. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful edition of The Court of Miracles by Kester Grant. It has sprayed edges and a shiny cover. Now, my phone's not doing this any justice because the ring light is kind of ruining it. But it's gorgeous, it's beautiful. And the story, let me tell you. Let me tell you. It has a French Revolution vibe to it. You can see that there are some Easter eggs there from Les Mis, from Les Miserables. I can never say that word properly because I don't speak French, I'm sorry. But Les Mis, it's so good, so good. The system, I want to say, the political system, we'll call it that, in this society is very intricate, it's very complex. So it took me a while to figure out what all the courts meant and what they each did and all that. But once I got into the story, oh my goodness, I couldn't stop reading it. I read this really quickly. It's a big boy, it's a chunky book, but I read this really quickly and it was so worth it. Now I have heard people who DNF'd it, who gave bad reviews to this book, but I personally, I really enjoyed it. It was one of my favorite books of the year. And yeah, you know, it just goes to show, even if you see a bad review somewhere, read the book for yourself, make up your own mind. Don't just go by somebody else's opinions. That's all I'm saying. Okay, then we got the third book in the Nevermoor series by Jessica Townsend. Oh my goodness, I love this series, okay? It's my favorite middle grade series of all times. Now, this book came out at a very interesting time because, you know, the world was in the middle of a pandemic. This book is about a pandemic. It's not as big or as, you know, as serious as what's happening in real life, obviously, but you can kind of get the sense of where things are going, of how people felt in that situation, the urgency to do something about it, and helplessness, because sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. You just have to, you know, keep yourself safe, that's all. Yeah, so this was a really good book to read this year. I loved it. It was so good. All the main characters came back and we got to meet other characters and it was just really good. I highly recommend it. Okay, and the final book we have here, number 7, which is, you know, I would say, I don't know, I couldn't put them in the right order. I don't know which one's the best, but the last book we have here in my top 7 list is Who's Surprised? Who's surprised? I'm not. The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. The biggest book I've read this year. Easily the biggest book I've read. So worth it. It's a fantasy book. It has dragons in it. It has a lot of history with it. It was inspired by Asian and Nordic history or folklore. I think that's what it is. I think it's a mixture between Asian and Nordic or Eastern European, something like that. I have to do my research before I do these videos, honestly. But it's such an intricate system, and the two cultures kind of have to get along in order to fight off the dragons, which is their common enemy. And oh my goodness, it's so good. So good. Lots of representation in here for all sorts of background and just, yeah, it's just good. I don't know how to explain it without giving away any spoilers. I'm terrified of giving out spoilers. So, The Priory of the Orange Tree, my little baby for 2020. Now, these books are not in the right order, as I've said before. But I love them all. Let me move you so you can actually see them. There you go. Now, we have 7 lovely books. I recommend all of them. And yeah, we have thriller, we have philosophy, I want to say, non-fiction, fantasy. Oops, there's one left. And middle grade fantasy. And I highly recommend any of these books. I couldn't put them in the right order. I couldn't tell you which one's my favorite because it's like picking a favorite child, isn't it? Isn't that what they say? Yeah, I couldn't do it. I couldn't. So yeah, if you like this video, you know what to do. Give it a like, subscribe, click the bell, leave a comment. Have you read any of these books? What was your favorite book of 2020? Hi, welcome back, Millie. And what was your favorite book of 2020? Let me know down in the comments and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.